A full transcript is available for this video. The link is in the description. How much effort are you willing to put in to enjoy a new Pokemon game? If you're like me, you barely have to think about it. If you want to play a new game, you go to the store, or you order it online, or you buy it on the eShop, you load it up, and you just play, right? There's nothing you have to worry about beyond whether you're gonna like it or not. You rarely consider whether you'll be able to follow the story, or navigate the menus, or understand your objectives. But that's not everyone's experience. For many Pokemon fans, there are significant barriers that prevent them from playing the games as easily, or even at all.
I'm Tony, or Saiyan4414. I'm a legally blind Pokemon streamer and content creator. Honestly, I've been playing since about Generation 1. I'm technically blind or visually impaired, but a lot of people say legally blind because, for one thing, I'm not total. Like, I can see a little bit, I can see light, I cannot see color, I can see figures to an extent. I can see print, but I cannot read it. Glasses do not help me, except for making it easier for me to see when I'm outside, because it makes it darker.
Since Tony is a longtime Pokemon player, I wanted to understand better how he plays.
So a lot of the game stuff I do strictly through audio. I cannot see well enough to read the screen, which sucks. A lot of times I will do it on Twitch or something like that. And with that, people will help guide me through wherever I need to go, kind of thing. For example, trying to find Pokemon, like in the main menu, I'll scroll down and I'll click A, and then it'll be like, I'll hear like one Pokemon in a party, and then another one, I'll be like, oh, hey, so that's the party. And then I'll scroll down. Like, I remember at one point, I don't remember which game it was, but for the longest time, it's like you scroll down 4, and that's automatically saving, I think. Either 3 or 4. So I would memorize stuff like that. But if I run into something, it's like where I have to read, I need to get visual help, because it'll be like, oh, hey, this person gave me an item. I don't know what you gave me, but you gave me an item. Thank you.
Tony needs plenty of help to be able to play through the main story of Pokemon, but once he's had the chance to become more familiar with the maps, the music and the sound effects are usually enough for him to be able to navigate.
A lot of the Pokemon games, you have different audio cues from, like, say, when you're in the city or when you're in, like, the grass or stuff like that. It's completely different so you can tell, hey, you're in this area. Hey, you just went through a building. Hey, you're on the water.
Which is part of the reason he spends so much of his time shiny hunting.
If it comes to, like, finding Pokemon, that kind of thing, like, I can catch the Pokemon, I can shiny hunt, I can do all that by myself. Everything's done via audio for me. So if you find a shiny, there's an audio cue beforehand. I basically memorize 90% of the cries. There are some that I haven't memorized, or some that I've forgotten, or in X and Y when they changed it. It's like the more Pokemon that come in a game, the more cries I have to memorize. Honestly, I like the fact of hearing the sparkles and being like my reactions, because heck, I have a ton of shiny reactions on my YouTube channel. I have some shiny fails, because who doesn't? But honestly, I like the, hey, that's a shiny. Like, I'm looking for it, but at the same time, I don't always expect it.
But unfortunately, not all Pokemon games are created equal, and even shiny hunting can have its problems for a visually impaired player.
That was one of my issues with shiny hunting in X and Y, like with the horde battles, because, like, say I hear, oh, hey, there's a shiny. I can't tell which one's a shiny, which one's not. I could accidentally just kill a shiny. Like, heck, I know for a fact I've done that in the Zangoose and Viper hordes. Then, basically, Dynamax Adventures. When you went through the 4 Pokemon, you basically had to scroll and basically figure out which one was shiny, which one wasn't. It was completely visual. I was playing with, like, some friends, like, offline, and they were able to tell me, hey, that's a shiny. But I wouldn't have been able to know otherwise.
Players with visual impairment are not the only ones who face barriers. Motion controls famously cause problems for players with motor issues, for example. But it's not just players with disabilities who are affected. What if the game isn't even available in your language?
Meu nome é Daniel, né? Eu tenho contato com jogos desde criancinha, acho que como todo mundo, né? A gente sempre começa desde jovem, né? Mais especificamente com Nintendo, né? Apesar de ter jogado outras plataformas e de outras desenvolvedoras, a paixão fica ainda pro lado da Nintendo e todas as suas franquias e séries acaba sendo sugado por essas séries. Aqui no Brasil, a Nintendo é muito pequena comparado às demais concorrentes, né? E a comunidade também carece também de conteúdo, né? Como a grande mídia acaba focando mais em Sony, Microsoft, a gente tem poucos canais, poucos conteúdos a respeito, né? Então eu acabei indo criar conteúdo sobre Nintendo em formato de podcast, porque a gente tem poucos representantes no Brasil. Pokémon eu acompanho realmente desde o lançamento, né? Porque o Pokémon, apesar de ser bastante antigo, né? 25 anos, eu realmente acompanhei o nascimento da franquia, né?
I'm Brazilian too, and from the same generation of Pokemon fans as Danielle, but I've been bilingual since I was 3 years old. I never had the experience of having to play the games in a language I don't understand.
Aqui no Brasil, a gente já é o contrário. A gente não sabe muito bem o que é jogar o jogo na nossa língua. Pro brasileiro, jogar na nossa língua é o estranho, vamos dizer assim, né? Porque a gente vem de um passado onde nada era localizado, né? Nos anos 80, 90, 2000, tudo era em inglês. A única local que a gente tinha jogos em português era no PC. Uma coisa é você estar na sua língua nativa, você bate o olho no texto, você já entendeu o que tá rolando ali, né? Agora não é a sua língua nativa, você tem que ficar prestando atenção, fazendo aquele trabalho de associação, tentar entender o contexto. É um puta trabalho mental que às vezes na hora que você tá pegando um jogo, você quer se divertir, você vai gastar seu tempo ou vai gastar um pouco a sua mente um pouco assim para traduzir aquilo para você entender, apertar rapidinho e vamos embora para frente, entendeu? Então acontece muito esse tipo de situação. O brasileiro é muito condicionado a jogar sem entender, já por padrão. Ele até opta por escolher jogos que não precisam daquela língua.
It's not that the games are completely unplayable if you don't understand the language. In a similar way that Tony uses audio cues to get around the map, for Brazilian fans, the anime can provide a lot of clues. The anime, unlike the games, does get translated into Brazilian Portuguese.
O anime, por sinal, ajuda muito a fazer você entender o próprio jogo. Porque você vê o que tá no jogo e você relaciona com o anime. Então você consegue cruzar muito das coisas e consegue, na sua cabeça, o que tá acontecendo aqui é o que aconteceu no anime, o que acontece no anime. Então você faz muito cruzamento das informações. E às vezes nem entendem. A verdade é porque, assim, o Pokémon, se você pegar todos os jogos, ele tem um padrão. Você precisa montar o seu time, treinar a sua equipe, você pega os personagens que você mais gosta. O anime, de novo, ajuda muito nessa questão de você conhece aquele personagem, você quer aquele personagem porque você gosta muito dele. Você tem aquela mecânica de vencer os ginásios, tem o rival e tudo mais, o time rival. Mas, de novo, o anime também consegue muito fazer essa conversão. Mas, basicamente, se a pessoa não entende o inglês, né? Ela acaba apertando o A rapidinho, passando as mensagens rapidinho e vai que vai. Por exemplo, eu não tenho um conhecimento tão grande em inglês, eu consigo entender o que tá rolando, mas eu me vejo muito assim, por exemplo, Pokémon Sword. Comecei a jogar o Pokémon Sword. Aquela historinha chata, tal. A hora que eu via, olha, eu não tô interessado na história. Eu já ia apertando o A, porque sabe quando você perde, você não se envolve com o jogo, você acaba, tá bom, vai, vamos pro jogo em si e deixa a história pro lado, vira uma coisa acessória. Por outro lado, quando é uma história que eu tô envolvido, eu joguei recentemente o Atelier Sophie, que é um jogo fofinho e tem texto, nossa, tem texto pra tudo quanto é lado, muito texto. Só que eu me peguei assim, peraí, deixa eu prestar atenção nesse diálogo, porque eu queria entender o que estava acontecendo na história. Mas, de novo, é porque eu tenho um pouco de conhecimento e estava envolvido. Mas acontece muito isso, né, da pessoa joga fora, realmente isso, joga fora essa parte e concentra na parte do jogo, né, que é treinar, lutar, capturar, que é o core do jogo em si, na verdade.
I honestly find it a little bit hard to imagine what it's like to play Pokémon without being able to follow the story, and especially without getting any of the lore. Playing Pokémon without reading the Pokédex? You're missing a huge chunk of what Pokémon is all about, And yet, that's the experience of a lot of players, whether it's because of a language barrier or a visual impairment or even something like a cognitive disability, for example. In a way, things were a little bit better in the past.
Na geração 8 bits, 16 bits, como os jogos acabam sendo mais simples, isso acaba não atrapalhando tanto, mas quando a gente já chega na geração ali dos 32, 64 ali do Nintendo 64, do PlayStation, que a gente começa a ganhar jogos mais cinematográficos, começa a pesar esse tipo de coisa. Se você perguntar pro brasileiro se ele gosta de RPG, certamente você vai ouvir muito, não, é muito texto, muita coisa para ser lido, né? E a pessoa não entende, não acontece isso, né?
Because the Pokemon story has generally been fairly simple, ignoring it hasn't often posed a big problem. And with the game format staying more or less the same, if you know how to play one Pokemon game, you know how to play them all pretty much. So when games make significant departures from the formula, they can leave some players behind. Tony hasn't been able to play Pokemon Legends Arceus, for example.
Normal Pokemon, honestly, has been a lot of the... You go around, you find the Pokemon, you do the walking. Like, it's been a general, like, samey type thing. Legends is not that. For example, with shiny hunting, there's a ton of Pokemon. It's like you have to throw the ball, and it's not something you can easily do being visually impaired or blind in general.
O irmão, por exemplo, gostou muito da história do Pokémon Legends, porque ele remete muito à lore e tudo mais, né? E eu já não tenho tanto essa pegada com a lore de Pokémon. Muitas vezes eu me peguei apertando o A pra frente e deixa eu ir lá jogar bolinha na cabeça dos Pokémon, que tá muito mais legal do que eu ficar conversando aqui com vocês.
For a lot of people, part of the appeal of Pokemon was that you could just button mash through the story and focus on the battles. Or that the battles are strictly turn-based, so they don't require fine motor skills or good vision. The kinds of changes to the franchise that we've started to see, and that many of us, myself included, want to see more of, departing from that same old formula, trying new things, it can cause problems for players who relied on those old ways of playing. But, and this is the really important part, those players do not need to be left behind. Just because we're trying a new way to interact with wild Pokemon doesn't mean we have to make it less accessible for players with visual or motor issues, for example. Just because we're changing the formula, so we need to communicate the game's objectives to the player in a clear manner, doesn't mean that we have to lock out players who can't read the dialogue. What needs to happen, what Game Freak and the Pokemon Company and even Nintendo need to do, is ensure that the games offer the accessibility options that will make the games playable for everyone. And other developers, other publishers, have been doing that work.
The Xbox and the PlayStation have something called text-to-speech. It's basically a toggle within the system where it will read what's on the screen. And you don't necessarily have to have it on. Like, you can easily just not turn it on and it's fine. And it doesn't affect the actual gameplay for anybody that can see. But for someone that can't, it's super helpful. Nintendo has not followed suit.
It's similar when it comes to localization.
Já é um padrão, vamos dizer assim, para outras marcas que não Nintendo, então Sony, Microsoft, jogos indie, são áreas que a gente não se preocupa mais com isso, né? Vai sair um jogo novo da Sony, vai sair um jogo novo da Microsoft. Beleza, vai chegar em português, não é uma dúvida, entendeu? Como as pessoas já estão acostumadas a receber jogos localizados de outras empresas, acontece muito da pessoa, esse console, esse jogo não está localizado, beleza, eu não vou consumir, vou consumir o outro jogo que está localizado. Então já existe muito esse tipo de cenário aqui no Brasil.
And that's really the issue. If you don't properly support players, you will push them away from your games and towards others. Not only do you lose out on potential sales, but more importantly, the community around your games will suffer too. You're blocking out people who might otherwise fall in love with your game, with your characters, who might become superfans and make videos on YouTube and make the community richer.
We're the minority, so you don't think, hey, we need to do stuff for people that are visually impaired or people that have motor skills so they can't just pick up a game and just move the screen because their hands will start to hurt. That's not something you automatically think of, unfortunately.
And to a degree, it's understandable from a purely capitalist perspective. If it's a small market, it might not be worth the investment to be able to reach those people. I know from personal experience that it takes a lot of time and effort and therefore monetary investment to make media accessible.
A gente entende também, infelizmente, né? A gente tá no Brasil. Uma coisa é você localizar um jogo mobile, que você vai atingir muitas pessoas. E quando você está falando que você vai localizar um jogo para Switch, certamente você não vai atingir as mesmas pessoas.
But it's only by investing in those markets, whether by localizing into more languages or adding more accessibility features, only by doing that can you foster growth in those markets and those communities.
Você não ter o jogo localizado, você acaba não dando acesso a pessoas que não se sentem à vontade em receber um produto que não esteja na sua língua nativa. Eu acho que acaba afastando aquilo que a gente acabou de falar, né? De afastar as pessoas dos seus produtos.
And by not catering to those markets, you send the message that they do not matter.
Because I always think about this. The rating on most games is it's for everybody or everybody can play it. Unfortunately, like not everybody can play it. There are people with disabilities that the world unfortunately doesn't think about. I haven't done this in a while, but usually what I try to do is I'll call Nintendo and talk to them about accessibility. The issue with that, it's great that I'm doing it, but I'm one person. It's not going to stop me from doing it, but we need more than just like, say, me calling and telling Nintendo, hey, this is something that needs to be done. We need tons of people. We need the community telling them, hey, blind people, vision impaired people, heck, not, people with other disabilities want to play too and can't because there are issues with the games that easily can be fixed to make it so that everybody can play. Your rating is E for everyone, but you forget that everyone includes people with different disabilities or different issues that limit them from playing your games.
This more coordinated campaign is something that Danielle has been involved with. If you saw the hashtag Pokemon Scarlet Violet PTBR going around on Twitter a few months ago, Danielle was part of launching that.
Por conta da a gente não ter uma representação 100% no Brasil, a gente acaba fazendo movimentos para pedir coisas, para mostrar que a gente tem uma comunidade grande, ou até mesmo uma comunidade em expansão que precisa ser ouvida. E a Pokémon, num primeiro momento, estava respondendo de forma automatizada, e depois ela parou. Ela cessou as respostas, depois de algumas horas, e ela só respondeu um mês depois, já com uma resposta muito mais formal, falando é muito importante, mas não vai ter a localização. Mas a gente viu que o que a gente queria aconteceu, que era levar nosso pedido para os representantes. Então, esse movimento aconteceu. A grande questão é essa mudança de paradigma, né? Elas não veem os países da América Latina como uma necessidade, né, de você localizar seus jogos, né? Aparentemente é uma questão muito cultural, né? Para eles colocou o japonês, colocou o inglês, pronto, tá todo mundo consumindo aquele conteúdo. E não é assim, né? Não é você colocar espanhol, pronto, o brasileiro vai consumir aquele conteúdo. Não, o brasileiro fala português, que não é o mesmo português de Portugal.
Those of us who are allies need to do our part too. Signal boosting similar campaigns for accessibility and localization, even if it doesn't affect us personally. Doing our best to understand how other people enjoy the games that we love and in what ways they're locked out from a fuller experience. Pokemon and Nintendo have a lot of work to do, and we can't let them forget that. They aren't the only ones. I realized while working on this video that this video is not accessible. I mean, for months now, I've been making proper closed captions for my videos so that if you have impaired hearing, you can still get the most out of them. But if you're visually impaired, you probably have no idea what Danielle said. And if you don't speak English, then you really have no idea what this is about. That's why I made a full transcript of this video, to make up for some of that. I would love for my videos to be fully accessible and translated at least into my native language, if not tons of others. But one, YouTube doesn't make it easy. Like, they removed support for community captions, and they haven't made the described video a widely available feature. And two, I am one overworked person making videos for a relatively small audience. I do not have the time or the expertise or the money to hire the expertise to tackle all of that. But Nintendo and Pokemon are not me. They do have the resources to add every minute accessibility feature and have the game localized into dozens more languages than they currently do. The fact that they don't is intentional and unacceptable. I decided to focus on these two perspectives for this video because they represent fairly large groups and I knew who to reach out to. But obviously visual and language barriers aren't the only ones that people face. If you have a unique experience with Pokemon or games in general, tell us about it in the comments. If there's enough interest, I could even do another video like this highlighting more perspectives. Thank you to Danielle and Tony for speaking with me about this. I hope that I did you justice. Links to all of their relevant accounts are in the description. Thank you also to my patrons and YouTube channel members who help me make videos like this, especially Tilt, who became a patron this month, and luxury patron Ethan from Chicago. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.